Hi, my name is Ari Schonbrun, and on September 11th of 2001, I was working on the 101st floor of the World Trade Center. The company I worked for occupied the top 5 floors of Tower 1 of the World Trade Center. We employed 960 people. On that day, 658 of my friends and coworkers were brutally murdered, simply because they were sitting at their desks. There was no other reason. They never did anything to anybody, they never hurt anybody. They just went to work like they did every day, and on that day, they didn't come home. 4 of the employees were actually on their way up to the offices on the upper floors, and 3 of them were so severely burned, they spent months and months in hospitals undergoing surgeries and rehabilitation, and 1 of them walked out without a scratch. And you're looking at that person. September 11th was an absolutely magnificent day. It was a beautiful fall day. Wasn't a cloud in the sky. Everything was great. I had my briefcase over my shoulder, had my cup of coffee in my hands. It was 27 in the morning. Yelled up to my wife, said, "Bye, hun, love you, see ya." Yelled up to my kids, "Bye, kids, have a great day in school." And I started to walk out the door. And all of a sudden, a voice from my second floor comes down, and my wife yells at me. She says, "Did you do Baruch's book order?" Baruch is my 3rd child. He was 8 years old at the time. And I learned something that day. Teachers have a wonderful way of torturing parents. It's called the scholastic book order. If you're laughing, I guess you know what it is. I had to work with him because my wife was a school principal. She had just opened school. And she was, besides the fact that the Jewish holidays were all coming up, so she was busy at home, she was busy at school, and she just didn't want to deal with my son, so it was my job to do it. And I said, "Sure, I'll take care of it." And of course, I didn't. And she said, "Did you do the book order?" And I said, "No, I didn't." She said, "You're not leaving the house until you do the book order." So I put my briefcase down, put my cup of coffee down, walked into my kitchen, proceeded to negotiate with my 8-year-old for the next 20 minutes. And I whittled him down to 2 books. I felt pretty good. Interestingly enough, the 2 books that he picked were from a series called Survivor. A chill went down my spine when those books showed up a few weeks later. Before I go on, the interesting point, or one of the interesting points, and you see this throughout my story, that book order was actually due on Monday. But my son left his pamphlet in school on Friday, and so my wife actually wrote a note to the teacher asking her if he can have an extra day, and she sent a note back saying, of course, and she made sure that the pamphlet was in his knapsack when he brought it home on Monday night. Had he brought that book order form home on Friday, I would have done it with him on Sunday. And on Tuesday morning, I would have been sitting at my desk at 8 o'clock in the morning, and somebody else would be sitting here telling you a different story because I'd be dead. But because he left that pamphlet in school on Friday, I'm here today to tell you a story. I walked out of my house after finishing with my son. I got to the World Trade Center at 20 minutes to 9. When I was normally there at 8 o'clock. In order to get to my office on the 101st floor, you had to take an express elevator up to 78. It was a sky lobby, and then change elevators on 78 to get to the elevators to take you to the higher floors. Well, I got into an elevator that came down on the right side of the lobby, went in, got up to the 78th floor, and hung a left because the elevators I needed to get to my office was all the way on the left side of the sky lobby. I must have been about 8 feet from that bank of elevators when, as best as I can describe, there was an explosion. I thought a bomb had gone off in the elevator. The entire building shook. The lights went out, the place filled with smoke, and I was literally thrown off my feet. There was screaming, there was havoc, people yelling fire. I obviously knew there was fire because a bomb had gone off in the elevator, at least that's what I thought. I ultimately found an office around the bend on behind one of the banks of elevators, and there was a guy in there who was trying to figure out what we should do, where we should go. He couldn't figure it out. He was trying the phones were dead. I walked back out into the hall, and when I did, I bumped into a coworker of mine. Her name was Virginia DiChiara. Virginia was on the elevator that I was about to get on when that plane hit. And as she described it to me, when the plane hit, the doors were started to close. They jammed open about a foot. The walls collapsed, the ceiling collapsed, there was a cable that snapped in the elevator, was sparking, the jet fuel came down the sides of the elevator and was ignited by the sparks, and there was a wall of fire. There were 3 people in that elevator: Roy Bell, Virginia, and Renee. Roy jumped through the fire first and he suffered 2nd-degree burns. Virginia jumped out right after him and she suffered 3rd-degree burns. And Renee, who was the last one out, ultimately died from her burns. That was the difference between life and death that day, at least for these 3 people. When Virginia saw me, she said to me, "Ari, thank God, please help me. I'm in so much pain. Please, whatever you do, don't leave me." And I said to Virginia, "I promise I will not leave you, and we will get out of here." We ultimately found a stairwell that went all the way from 78 down to 1. We got into that stairwell. We got all the way down to 1. When we got out of the building, we were shown a place where there was going to be a triage center. I took her across the street, and sure enough, an ambulance pulled up. We got her into the ambulance. When I asked the driver why they weren't leaving, he said to me, they can't leave until they fill the ambulance. They were expecting a huge amount of casualties. Fortunately or unfortunately, it just didn't materialize, because on that day, you were either very, very much alive or very, very much dead. There wasn't a whole lot in between. They finally filled the ambulance, and the EMT said, "Okay, we're ready to roll." And as he says this, Virginia turns to me, she says to me, "Ari, you're coming with us." Now, the reality is I really didn't want to go because, getting into an ambulance on that day, going to God knows where, didn't excite me. Besides, once that ambulance leaves, the only place I'm going is back into that building to see if I can help, look for friends, see what I can do. I said to Virginia, "You don't need me anymore. I'm going to get a hold of your mom. She's going to meet you at the hospital. You're going to be okay." She turns to the ambulance driver and she says, "We're not leaving unless he comes with us." The ambulance driver looks at me. I look at him. I said, maybe for her own psychological benefit, maybe I should just come. And he said, "Fine, hop into the front." And I got into the front of that ambulance and we got away. We were one of only a few ambulances that actually got away from the scene that day. Virginia thanks me every single day for saving her life. And I say to her, "You got it all wrong." Who saved whose life? If she wouldn't have insisted that I get into that ambulance, I would have been standing at the base of that building when it came down and I'd be dead. There is no doubt in my mind. But because she insisted that I get into that ambulance, I'm around today to tell my story. So as you can see from my story, things happen that we just don't have any control over, and we don't know why, and we don't know what the outcomes are going to be. I mean, a simple thing as my son leaving his pamphlet in school, leading to the fact that I'm alive today to tell my story, leading to the fact that Virginia insisted I get into the ambulance, and that's why I'm alive today. There were so many of these coincidences going on throughout the day for me that I understood that this was no coincidence. This was literally the hand of God. God was looking out for me, and he said to me, "Ari, you've got a job to do, and I'm plucking you out of a burning, collapsing building, and I'm giving you a second chance. Now tell me what you're going to do with it." And I really took that to heart, and I decided that I was going to make some changes. My life changed dramatically. One of the biggest changes that I made, I used to work on Wall Street, and let me tell you something, 4-letter words, swearing, cursing was the norm. It was horrendous, and I decided that was not going to be me any longer. And from that day on, for the last 18 years, I have never had a swear word come out of my mouth. I never cursed. And what was amazing was that when people were around me, whether it was a meeting or a conference room meeting, whatever it was, if I was in that meeting, nobody in that room would curse because everybody knew that Ari Schonbrun didn't curse. The world is a very, very strange place. We're living in chaotic times. And I really believe that, we as a society have a mission in this world, and our mission really is to make this world a better place. But how do we do that? Well, I think if everybody made that one decision, whether it was kindness, whether it was a smile, I think the world would be a better place. I can't do it alone. I need your help, all right? But together, we can make this world a better place. You know, it took a tragedy like the World Trade Center to make me realize what was important in life. It doesn't need to happen to you in order to make those changes, right? Learn from me. Learn from what happened to me and start making the changes today. And you'll see how it's going to affect you and all the people around you. I'm Ari Schonbrun, and you're watching JTV. Thank you.
To stay up to date with JTV content, click subscribe here if you're on YouTube and hit the alarm bell. And if you're on Facebook, hit the like button, and under following, click see first. If you enjoy watching JTV content and want to help us continue to grow, please consider making a donation to us by clicking here.